Good day, good day, good day. Welcome back to Celebrity Watchdog, the only place on the internet where we dig up the drama, dust it off, hold it up to the light, and say, yeah, that's messy. And today we are absolutely feasting because a 15-year-old boy just did what years of fan theories, tabloid journalists, and even a few therapists could not. He sat down, watched the original Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and gave the world his completely unfiltered, zero diplomacy, teenage boy review. And Khloe Kardashian? Reportedly, she is not okay. Mason Disick, son of Kourtney Kardashian and Scott Disick, nephew to the entire Kardashian-Jenner empire, apparently went back to the archives, binge-watched the early seasons, and came out the other side with an opinion that could only be described as generationally devastating. Buckle up. Quick favor before we get into this beautiful mess, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second, and means the world to us. Thanks. If you did, now back to the show. So let's paint the picture here. Mason Disick is not just some random kid who stumbled onto a reality TV show. He is the reality TV show. He was literally born into cameras, chaos, and a family that built an empire out of oversharing. His first steps? Filmed. His tantrums? Broadcasted. The time his parents' relationship was slowly crumbling in real time on national television? Yeah, he was right there in the living room. The boy has seen things. He is practically a walking archive of Kardashian content. And yet, sitting down to actually watch it as a teenager with fresh eyes, a full personality, and absolutely no reason to sugarcoat anything apparently hit different. Because when Mason Disick watched the old Kardashians, he did not say, "Wow, what a legacy." He said something closer to, "Wait, what was going on with all of you?" And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the story gets spicy. Now, let's talk about what reportedly set Khloe off, because that's the thread we're pulling today. According to sources close to the family, and let's be honest, in the Kardashian universe, sources close to the family basically means someone heard it between two ring lights at a photo shoot. Mason's commentary on the early seasons apparently included some pointed observations about how the aunties behaved back in the day. And Khloe, who has always been the loudest, most emotionally transparent member of the entire Kardashian operation, reportedly took it personally. Now, is that surprising? Absolutely not. This is the woman who once cried on camera because her sisters wouldn't support her clothing line and then launched a whole revenge body transformation arc. Khloe feels things at maximum volume. Always has, always will. It is honestly part of her charm. But here's what makes this so delicious. Mason isn't wrong. Let's go back to the early seasons of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. We are talking roughly 2007 through 2012. The shows were raw, chaotic, and completely unhinged in the best possible way. Khloe was the wildcard sister, loud, unbothered, dropping one-liners that would make a sailor blush. Kourtney was the passive-aggressive queen of the deadpan stare. Kim was busy being Kim, and all three of them were navigating fame, money, relationships, and cameras in a way that was, let's be extremely charitable here, not always their finest hour. Now, none of that is a crime. They were young, they were figuring it out, and reality TV in that era basically rewarded dysfunction. The messier, the better. The networks wanted drama, and the Kardashians, God bless them, delivered every single time. But here's the thing about footage. It doesn't forget. It doesn't age gracefully. It just sits there in the archive, crystal clear, waiting for the next generation to discover it and react with complete horror and fascination. And Mason Disick, armed with a streaming subscription and presumably a lot of free time, just found the archive. So what exactly did he say? Reports suggest that Mason's review touched on several moments that, in hindsight, are a lot. There's the infamous episode where Khloe is reckless, rambunctious, and running completely on chaos energy. There are the constant digs the sisters took at each other about weight, about relationships, about life choices that back then played as edgy banter, but today read as something a school counselor would want to have a conversation about. There are the moments where Scott Disick, Mason's own father, was being enabled, excused, and almost treated like a court jester while clearly spiraling. And Mason, sitting there watching all of it with the wisdom of a 15-year-old who has spent his entire life watching adults pretend everything is fine, apparently had thoughts. Many thoughts. Very specific thoughts. And if you're thinking, maybe he was kind about it, sweetie, he is Scott Disick's son. Kindness is not the primary factor.
Now, here's where we need to pause and give Mason some actual credit, because this deserves more than just laughs. This kid, who grew up watching his family's life play out on screens, who has had his own childhood moments broadcast to millions, who watched his parents' relationship disintegrate with the whole world weighing in, this kid went back and watched it with adult eyes. or at least teenage eyes, which in 2025 are approximately equal to adult eyes, because these kids are consuming media at a rate that would give previous generations a migraine. And his takeaway wasn't admiration, it wasn't nostalgia, it was honest, unfiltered critique. That is not nothing. That is actually a form of emotional intelligence that a lot of adults in his family are still working on. Because here's the truth, and this is where we get real for a second. The Kardashians have done an extraordinary job of rewriting their own narrative as the years have gone on. The early chaos became a brand, the dysfunction became content, the controversies became comeback arcs, and the family has been very deliberate about how they present themselves now, particularly on their newer Hulu series, The Kardashians, where everything is filtered, lit beautifully, and carefully calibrated for maximum sympathy and minimal accountability. But the old footage? That's the unedited version. That's the raw footage before anyone had a PR team whispering in their ear and a social media strategist reviewing every soundbite. And Mason just watched all of it back to back and went, huh. Which brings us back to Khloe, because reportedly, out of all the aunties, Khloe's old behavior is what Mason clocked most. And listen, if you've watched early KUWKT, you know exactly what scenes we're dancing around. Khloe was electric and entertaining, but she was also throwing hands verbally at anyone who looked at her sideways, making comments that would land very differently today, and generally operating at a frequency that was simultaneously hilarious and genuinely chaotic. And Khloe, who has spent the better part of the last decade carefully rebuilding her image as the evolved, grounded, good mom who doesn't take nonsense version of herself, finding out that her teenage nephew has watched the original cut and has notes, that is what we in the business call a full circle crisis. Because it's one thing for strangers on Twitter to dredge up old clips. Strangers don't matter. But your sister's kid? Your blood? The boy you've watched grow up who calls you Aunt Khloe, who has sat at your Thanksgiving table? That one stings differently. That one hits somewhere in the chest, right in the vicinity of, I thought we agreed we were moving past that era. And Kourtney's role in this whole thing is criminally underreported. Because on one hand, that is her son. And Kourtney has always had a slightly detached Zen master quality about her that suggests she is either extremely evolved or simply operating on a different emotional frequency than the rest of humanity. But on the other hand, some of Mason's commentary reportedly touched on how his parents' relationship was portrayed and how the show handled Scott's issues in particular, which means this isn't just funny, it's also, quietly, a little heartbreaking. Because Mason isn't just watching celebrities, he's watching his parents, he's watching his own origin story, and apparently he has opinions about the editing choices. Listen, this is why we say reality TV has consequences, not just for the adults who sign the contracts, but for the kids who grew up in the frame without ever having the option to say no. Mason Disick did not choose to be on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. He was born into it. And now, 15 years later, he can choose to sit down and watch the whole thing back, form his own opinions, and reportedly make Khloe spiral in the process. That is either deeply funny, quietly profound, or both simultaneously. Knowing the Kardashians, it's definitely both. Now, the internet, predictably, has absolutely lost its mind over this. The moment the first rumors about Mason's review started circulating online, the clips started flying. Every Khloe moment from seasons 1 through 5 suddenly had new life, new commentary, new context. People were stitching old scenes with the phrase, Mason watching this right now, and it was devastatingly accurate. Because in many ways, Mason Disick watching old KUWKT is the most relatable thing a teenager has done all year. We have all gone back and watched something from our past, or someone else's past, and thought, wow, we really were out here just behaving like that? The difference is that most of us were not filming it and broadcasting it to 15 million people weekly. The Kardashians were, and the receipts are still up. Here's what we're really watching unfold, though, and this is the part that I think gets lost in the jokes. Mason Disick represents the next chapter of this family story, a chapter that is going to be written by people who grew up watching the first one and have very clear opinions about how it went. He and his cousins, Northwest, Penelope Disick, True Thompson, and the rest of the next generation, they are going to grow up and form views about their parents' choices, their auntie's behavior, their family's legacy, with the unique burden of having all the primary source material readily available on demand. No family gossip required, just a streaming app and a Saturday afternoon. And that is genuinely new territory for celebrity culture. We have never quite been here before. The generation raised by reality TV now being old enough to review reality TV. And if Mason's reportedly savage commentary is any indication, they are not going to be gentle about it. But good for him. Honestly, good for Mason. Because if there's one thing the Kardashians have always said they stand for, between the brand deals and the Instagram posts and the carefully staged emotional moments, it's honesty, authenticity, keeping it real. Well, the boy kept it real. He just kept it real about them. And apparently that part wasn't in the branding.
Khloe, if you're watching this, and let's be honest, someone in that house has a Google alert set for Khloe Kardashian that fires every 45 seconds, just know that Mason's honesty is actually the greatest compliment. It means he paid attention. It means he cares enough to have an opinion. And it means the next generation is watching, closely, with receipts. And to everyone watching this right now, thank you. Genuinely. Thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Celebrity Watchdog. We will see you in the next one.